It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Chapters Season 2. First, I would like to thank everyone for your wonderful support for Chapter Season 1. The feedback has been absolutely amazing, and it is because of you that we can continue this journey. Chapter Season 2 brings you 13 episodes that we believe you'll find highly informative, educative, entertaining, engaging, and very enlightening. We hope that you go down this journey with us because, like we said at the beginning, there is so much information contained in books that can transform our lives, which is why we created this platform where we can engage with authors and learn about principles of life and living that affect every one of us. We decided to start this season with the very important subject of purpose because we believe that purpose is central to everything that we do as individuals. And so we hope that you enjoy episode 1 of Chapter Season 2 and join us every week as we bring you these episodes. Thank you for watching, thank you for being a part of this audience, and enjoy our first episode. You are welcome to Chapters. And on today's episode, we seek to understand how to discover and also the steps to take in fulfilling our purpose through the eyes of the book aptly titled The Purpose Book, written by Pastor JIMI TEWE, pastor at the Kingswold International Church. He's also a career and a business specialist. He's the CEO of JIMI TEWE Company, Lagos, and happily married with 2 beautiful children. You are welcome to Chapters.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much.
I came across your book, and when I came across your book, I thought, okay, another book on purpose that tells us those things about purpose, find your hobby, what you're good at, what makes you angry. But I read it, and I was pleasantly surprised. Thank you for writing this book.
Thank you very much.
Which will lead me to my first question. Why did you feel the need, especially when, like I said, we have many books on purpose. So why did you feel the need to add your body of knowledge to the subject of purpose?
Okay, so thanks again for having me on the show this evening. And I think the reason why was in my work, my day-to-day work, is I have a background in human resource management. And you know, I tell people that, you know, beyond the processes, beyond the policies, the people is what I really care about. And I realized that the more I discuss with people at different organizational levels, I realized that there's still a deep sense of lack of understanding of the reason for their existence.
Yes.
And for many of them, I realized that many of them are even Christians, and it got me wondering, you know, to say, haven't you heard messages about purpose? And I'm like, yeah, I've read this book, I've read that book. So I'm like, the more you read, don't you understand it? And I'm like, it's like I'm a bit confused about it. And so that got me thinking about, you know, how do we make it simple? You know, again, for me, you know, the subject of purpose is something that I learned to my own experience, you know, first and foremost. And then I also now began to, you know, read a bit of, you know, books and materials around it. And then I've been able to help a few people in terms of guiding them. Again, really, I think it's something that God helps people with, all right? But I believe that there are a few things, people understand those things, it can actually help them. So that's where it all started from, you know, basically to help people, because I realized lots of people seem to be confused with more books they are reading. So can we have a simple, you know, book they can go through, but not just about the discovery. I realized that the more important part is the fulfillment of purpose.
Certainly. And one of the things you said was this was something you experienced by yourself.
Yes.
So let's backtrack. You were a banker.
Yes.
A successful one. You had gotten to senior management level.
Yes.
And at some point in time, it seemed you found purpose.
Okay.
Tell us about that journey.
Okay, so I'll backtrack a bit further. All right, yeah, so I mean, before coming, I grew up in Ibadan.
Okay.
And coming into Lagos 2002, took my do my NYC back then, I realized then I had an encounter with God, actually, you know, where, you know, I got some sort of clarity and direction about, you know, some aspect of my life that I seem to have an interest in, but God made it clear to me that He will have me do some work in that regard. and it had to do with the marketplace. So coming to work wasn't just about getting a job for me. It was basically understanding what was going on there and now getting myself ready for whatever God will have me do eventually. Now, I began to, very quickly in my career, 5 years after NYC, I became a senior manager in the banking industry. I was earning good pay.
5 years after.
Yeah.
You were very good at your job. That's quick promotions.
Well, we can say that, right? So, I had all of that, but the more I earned, the more I felt this emptiness in my soul, and I began to ask questions. And then,
so the more you earned,
yes, exactly,
the more you felt empty.
It wasn't the earning that was the problem.
I know.
It was just, yes, exactly. So I thought that, with a lot more I'd be able to do, and I was doing a bit of, quite a number of good things, but I still felt there was something specific I was meant to be focusing on at that season of my life. And the more I began to think about it and also to pray about it, and I began to remember some things that God spoke to me about, and I began to feel that it was time again to begin to switch into some of those things. So I realized that I was the head of recruitment for one of the banks in Nigeria with coverage for Africa. But with all of that, I felt that there was a lot more. 2008, October, I had an experience. A particular gentleman walked into my bank and began to speak. And I just realized that, what he was doing was what I love to do, actually. Being able to inspire people with the words, either by writing or by speaking, and getting them to believe again in themselves, and now begin to pursue the dreams and the visions that God has placed in their heart. And I realized that sitting in that office or that desk would not bring me into that fully.
Yes.
Now, for some people, it's possible to do it alongside, but I realized for what God was asking me to do, it required I focused a whole lot more on it. That meant that I had to leave my high-paying job to go and do this thing that God was asking me to do. So it took me a few months to get around it, but eventually I got around it where I realized it was what God would have me do. Thankfully, my wife was okay with it, and then I took the point. That was 7 years ago, 2010, and then I left, banking there, and, to start this thing. I had a business I was running also, but more importantly, I started focusing my, time and energy helping people, in the part of career. That's where I started from, okay?
Okay.
Yes, career. So how do you understand the best fit career and all those kind of things? And then now using that as an extension to now remind them that there's an essence for living beyond just having a nice career. All right.
Yeah.
And that was where purpose now began to, to play out. So it's a long story, but that's basically how, this came about.
The journey started.
Yeah.
And then you wrote it I like how you wrote the book.
Yeah.
First, like you said, simple, absolutely simple,
Sure.
easy to understand.
Yes.
But then you broke it down into concepts. Why did you choose that word concepts and then break it down like that into concepts?
Yes, I realized number one is that Nigerians and Africans don't like reading big books. So the first thing I did was that, just mentally help them to realize that you could go through this in 31 days.
Yes.
One concept a day. Or one per month, maybe 31 months you finish eventually and all that. So the first thing, the other thing about it, I realized that, that purpose is, because it's conceived in the mind of God, it's not a unidimensional concept, it's multi-dimensional. And I realized that most teachings around purpose is unidirectional. So people say, discover your purpose, like when you find something you are meant to do, but when I looked at the story of Jesus, I realized that, yes, someone says, his purpose was to come and die for the sins of man, but he did more than that. Yes. He went around doing good. He healed people, he taught the word and all that. So thinking that purpose is unidimensional is one of the challenges we've had. So people say, I'm called to be a banker.
And just that one thing.
But that's not just the way that it works. So again, looking at the different dimensions to it and beginning to help people to understand that, I realized that because when you talk to Mr. A, he tells you that, I believe, I found my purpose, but it's taking so long. And there's a concept of times and seasons. He doesn't understand about that. Somebody says, this thing I'm doing, I'm a customer service officer.
Yes.
What does that have to do
with any...
the concept of placement. So I realized that there are many concepts around that, and that's where the idea about putting the concepts came from. Yeah.
Amazing. We can't touch on all the 31 concepts, so you have to get the book. But we'll touch on as many as we can. And let's start from the very beginning, the concept of predestination. That was the very first one. Yeah. Explain that for those that are watching.
So very simply put, pre is before, destination is an end. So basically to say that for everything that is created, or every human being, there's an end to where we're going to. In other words, predestination basically says that for everyone, there's something that God really wants you to do. It's not just one thing. When I say something, I'm just saying one thing, all right? There are many angles to it, all right? But there's a reason for your existence. There's something that God had in mind and brought you into the world as a solution for. Every human being must be conscious of that. There's a reason why you exist. And that's
the
what this
word
chapter
is
about.
consciousness. Consciousness. I'll read
Very
what
true.
you said. You said, you are a product of predestination. You are relevant. You were sent to this world. Understand this. Your presence on earth is to make a difference, not to merely exist or try to make the most of life.
True.
Powerful.
Thank you.
We have to go on a short break now.
All right.
When we come back, we'll look at other concepts in the book to just demystify this thing called
Concept of
purpose,
yes.
and to go deeper into it. You
Okay.
do not want to miss this very enlightening conversation. We will be right back. You are welcome back to Chapters, and on today's episode we are talking about discovering, but most importantly, fulfilling purpose. And I still have with me Pastor JIMI TEWE, the author of the amazing book, trust me, take my word on that, The Purpose Book. You know, I have a friend, and I think one of the things that actually inspired me to buy the book, I remember, so she was reading the book, and then she put a picture on Instagram saying, oh, I'm reading the Purpose Book, and this book is really making me think, or something along those lines. I know she's been my friend for many years, so I said, if she's reading this book, I'm going to go and find this book, and I understand why. So like I said, let's go back into the concepts. And the next one I want to talk about the concept of placement. Because I think that's also very important. Maybe tie it into identity. Identity flows into different many things, which is why many times we miss ourselves. So I don't know if I want to placement or identity, but placement, and one of the things you said is, it's not just about anywhere that you find yourself, but it's specifically about where God has placed you.
True.
How would you explain that?
Okay, so the first place is we look at in the Bible, in the first law first mentioned, Adam, God made man and placed him in the garden to tend and to keep it. And that's where the concept came from. To say that there is a place where every seed is meant to be able to grow. So basically, fish grow in water. They're able to, outside of that place, they can't function effectively. So what I find also, and even relating to the real world, is the fact that a lot of people struggle, because they have a job or they have work, but it's not really where they're meant to thrive. So they're struggling there, okay? So I like to give this example all the time. So put Usain Bolt, right, on the field. He's doing well. Put him in a physics class, it looks like he's not really intelligent, right? Okay, so there's something about placement to say that, even in, because I do recruitment, all right? We also look to say, where will this person fit? We call it square pegs, square holes. So even God takes that into consideration. Now again, your purpose has seasons and times where that's concerned, but for every season, there's a place that you're meant to be. So your placements can change. It can change per season. It can. Very true. Very true. So again, there was a season of Jesus' life, for example, was in Egypt, right? And the Bible actually prophesied about that. There was a time was in Nazareth. The Bible prophesied about that, okay? John Baptist, there was a time was in the wilderness, all right? So everything there's, so one of the things you must be conscious about is, am I in the right place? Where you are today might be fine, tomorrow it can change. And so you must be sensitive to follow where your heart is going. So for example, like I said, I was working in the banking industry, and that place was excellent. I enjoyed. You see, the thing about where God places you, that every force of heaven supports you there.
I agree.
So when Elijah was by the brook Cherith, that was the place God said to him, and he prospered until God said, leave this place. If he stayed there, he would have suffered. Yes. Exactly, yes. So people need to understand this. And that's why some people, but God, you told me to come here. I'm not feeling this any longer. That's what we say. And sometimes it's because you have the ark has moved.
There's the cloud has shifted.
Don't stay in the wilderness and don't die there. So that's the whole idea around placement. And in the book, we talk about 3 areas of placement. We talk about ministry, industry, and society. Because I try to make it relatable. Yes. All right? So when we say purpose, most people think, oh, then that means I must serve the Lord, and so I must be in church.
And I like the fact that you explained that.
Exactly, yes. So yes, some people are called out for the fivefold, all right? So the prophets, evangelists, apostles, pastors, and teachers, and there are people that are actually caught out where their own assignment is not necessarily within the 4 walls of the church, but are in society or in industry, okay? Now, there's also the concept of the 7 mountains I spoke about much later, all right? And these are things people need to begin to understand, that even if you are a tailor, or let me put it nicer, a fashion designer, exactly, yes. In that place, there's something that God can have you do there. There are people you will reach there that I cannot reach. because they're going to come to your store regularly and all that. And that's a place you can actually let them know about the love of God and about the salvation that comes from God also. So there's that placement that is there. But don't say, oh, I want to serve God, so that means I must be in church. No. In fact, what church does, and I talk about that, all right, is to equip you so that you're effective in the place that you are meant to be and all that. So it's important that people understand where they're meant to be placed and stay there. And if God moves, then they move with God. That's the most important thing.
Listening to you now, you just reminded me of the concept of the kingdom.
Yes.
Because, like you said, many times you think it's only those in the ministerial that are called to do the work of the kingdom. And everything you tie to in this book is that God created you and created you. So, like you said, whether you're a fashion designer, you're a musician, whatever, you understand that you are here to do the work of the kingdom. So regardless of wherever it is that you are,
very true.
Be conscious that there's a work of God
that has to be done.
That has to be done.
Very true.
But I'll take us then back to the concept of identity.
Yes.
Because I love that chapter, and especially in these days where social media is fantastic, but sometimes, it can be a problem. And you are seeing your friend looking so fantastic, everybody's slaying, or, all sorts of things.
I get you.
There's really, truly a fight for identity. I want to look like the next person. I want to be like the next person. I want to blow like the next person. Exactly. How would you explain identity in the framework of purpose?
In the eyes of God, there is somebody that you are. And until you come to an understanding of that, you will try to copy everybody around you.
One of the things you said in identity was self-confidence.
Yes.
And that's really where where people have challenges.
Yes.
Low self-esteem, self-confidence. You gave your example. You said growing up, you had huge challenges with inferiority complex.
Yes.
And how did you handle yours?
I'll say this to you. So people still wonder a lot of times, people that knew me back then, how do you talk everywhere? I never used to talk. I was very reserved. I was very withdrawn, very shy. That's the fact about it. But for me, 2001, when I had that encounter, changed things. That day, I felt God sent me to this world, and I knew it.
You knew it?
I knew it. And that gave me confidence. So I'll meet people, for example, that are doing well in their field, but as soon as I'm over, being mesmerized by their own presence, I remember who I am. And I don't forget that. But a lot of people don't have that. And so they try to mirror what they see out there. All right. So identity gives you strong self-confidence.
Fantastic. And so we're not saying you can admire people.
Sure.
You can be motivated by them.
By them, yes.
But your own identity.
You mustn't forget who you are.
Must be intact.
Yes. I'd like to say you must be to become.
You must be.
Yes.
To become.
Exactly. That's the way it works. So for example, for many years, I have been what I'm doing today, even though it didn't look like it around me. Okay, so what that means essentially is this, that somebody says, I met someone recently, and she says, oh, I'm a personal stylist. I said, from today, you call yourself the personal stylist. It might not look like it, you might not have a store, you might not, but once you keep that identity, from that moment, you will identify all opportunities around you that will fuel that identity. That's the thing that is there.
So you be within.
Yes.
You don't become first, then call yourself
exactly.
I am.
Yes. You must be inside, and then later it now begins to reflect on the outside.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the concept of race.
Yes.
I really love that one.
True.
Because, and one of the things you said there, you said, you are running a race. We're all here to run a race.
Yes.
However, you are not the one that determines the path.
Yes.
Explain that.
So, Ephesians chapter 2:10, Amplified Version, talks about the fact that we're created, we're born anew unto good works which God has prepared ahead of us. He said, following paths which He prepared ahead of time. So what my path meant that I started off working in a company called Research Consulting, then I moved to Junior Achievement, then I moved to Accenture, then I moved to UBA, then I moved to Bank PHB, then I moved to Inspire Consulting, and I moved to JIMI TEWE company. So let me explain that path. All right? So somebody said to me, wow, you just planned your career, and I'm like, oh, if only you knew, right? So when I left school, all right, I had an experience. I had these guys that were in school, and we all grew up together. They were into IT, and they were rich. They had money. So I just figured that the way to be rich is to go into IT. But the more I read, the less I understood. And then I had an experience where I was able to, by sitting with what I enjoyed doing. I loved working in church then. I was the church administrator in the church I was in Ibadan. I used to read a lot of books and all that. One day I gave them advice. They paid me 1,000 naira. This was many years ago. I said to myself, is there any job that you can do? Don't be talking. I'm serious, that's how it. And then I realized there's an area called management consulting where you basically sit with businesses. And that spurred my interest. When I came to Lagos, I went into management consulting. First company. Then after a while, I began to do some work with youth for them. And the thing about youth began to grow in my heart, but the company wasn't interested in that area. So I said, I followed my heart. Another organization that had some stuff to do with youth empowerment. I joined them, Junior Achievement, and then I worked there. Then I began to miss consulting again. And then I just followed consulting, and I got into Accenture. Now, once in Accenture, this was one of the big things that was there. So I realized that I wanted to work in the industry, not just be a consultant that talks, they don't use what he says. So you will notice that in all of this, my heart is, I'm just following my heart. Why? Your heart is the beacon that God uses. The Bible says that the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, and which it searches the innermost part of the belly. So, and that's why you don't copy people.
Yes.
All right? There's certain times that what you do will look like what people are doing. Sometimes it might be a deviation. If it's what is leading you to do, then you better do it, because that path, every provision is along that path. So if you go off that path, it's like trying to create a bush path when there's a real path that is there. So that part is there. So again, it will come by opportunity. Somebody will just mention, oh, you are traveling to this country, and all of a sudden it appeals to you more than it does to me. I love Nigeria. I'm not going anywhere, right? And then, but for you, your heart keeps longing for it. And the more you look into it, the more you begin to see, then follow that place. And that's how it is. So the path is set by God. And let me say something about paths also. Sometimes our decisions makes us get off the path. We make mistakes. Yes. We make mistakes.
That's very good, because like you said, truly we make mistakes.
Yes. So when you do make a mistake, what God does is that he reroutes your life to bring you back into the path.
Still to that path.
Exactly, yes. So that's the concept of grace. That's what it does. So I like to use the analogy about the GPS in the car, that when you miss a turn, it never abuses you. And so keep going. No, it just will reroute you. That's what grace does. It will reroute you and bring you along the path that God has prepared for your life.
Amazing. I'm loving this. I'm totally loving this. No, because truly, these are things, and I'm glad you mentioned mistakes, because some people always think that once I detoured and then you realize that, oh, I messed up, oh, I detoured, oh, what did I do? Then you now stay in that place, and you don't find yourself.
Many of the great people that God has used made big, huge mistakes. I mean, Apostle Paul has no reason for fulfilling purpose. Yes. He's one of the champions around that and all that. And when I hear stories like that, that encourage me to keep forging ahead and going forward.
Wow. Amazing conversation. But after the break, I want us to come and talk about some deep, deep concepts that I said, these kinds of things we don't want to hear. So guys, you do not want to miss this conversation. Much more deep stuff after the break. We'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back to Chapters. And this episode has been absolutely enlightening, talking about discovering and fulfilling purpose through the eyes of the book, The Purpose Book. And Pastor JIMI TEWE, before we went on the break, you took us down thought-provoking lane. But now, there are some concepts in this book that I said we don't want this kind of concepts when we're talking about purpose. I want us to touch on them. The first one was the concept of tests. And you said tests are a very important part of life.
Yeah.
Every major phase is usually preceded by tests. When you said it, you then said this happens in school. I realized why we actually did tests in school. And you said the test of the last class will take you to the next step. Please explain this concept of tests, because we don't like tests.
Okay, so the truth about it is this, that God actually wants you to fulfill your purpose. Because of that, he has to stress test you. Because he understands that man has the capability to make decisions for him or against him. And so you see, for example, that when he was going to walk with Abraham, he got to a point, he tested him. In fact, the Bible clearly says he tested him and asked him to sacrifice his son. And then he now said, now I know. God, didn't you know before? And I believe that God has many now I know moments with us where he's going to test us. So I'll give you an example. I'd heard Reverend Sam Adiemi say, save, if you're going to transit, save your salary. I have at least 6 months salary. So I was doing that, I even had more than 6 months. And then one Sunday morning, a month to when I was going to leave, I heard that, hey, that money you are saving, take it and put in the offering basket today. So I fought it for like a week. I can't lie.
Sure,
it wasn't that day.
It was not a month.
It wasn't,
just for her.
Exactly,
you are very good. Just
so I fought it, but eventually I did. And the reason why God had to make me do that was because many of what I would do, I wouldn't have the finances to start it off with. But I must trust him enough to believe. But if I held that money, life will still go on. I'll still have testimonies here and there. But he can't trust me with the next level. So the way the Bible puts it is that if you are faithful in little, you'll be faithful in much.
Much.
Tests basically will let you know the next step you are going to move to.
And you gave us 3 tests: the test
Yes.
of time, the test of trust, the
Trust.
test of things,
Yes.
and the test of time.
Yes. But again, the thing about it is that testing in engineering, stress test basically lets you know what has the capacity to carry more things.
Yes.
So God will stress test you from time to time, all right? Not because he wants you to fail. Now, when engineers do stress tests, if it fails, they work on you again. So if you remember, the man is molding, right? And that's, I think it's in Jeremiah, right? And so it's the clay.
The clay.
And then it now gets deformed. He forms it again into a vessel. That's the way that God works with us.
Enjoy the stress tests. They are good for you.
Yes.
The concept of sacrifice.
Yes.
Talk
Yeah.
about the concept of sacrifice.
I'm yet to meet somebody great that didn't sacrifice. I've met many mediocre people that did not sacrifice. And I made up my mind that I have only one life to live, and it has to be around greatness. Greatness not in the side of man, but in the side of God, which ultimately will still be great in the side of man.
Yes.
All right? And so I realized that, look, I sat down, I looked at people, different spheres, different industries. I went to South Africa and I went to where Mandela, was in prison and all that. And I said to myself, 27 days I'll have been out. Man, you guys...
Has been
27
years.
Sacrifice. So people enjoy the benefit of sacrifice, but don't want to go through the process of sacrifice. So when I left banking, it was pretty challenging. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'm sure that it was.
Married, 2 children and all that. I had a house. I bought with a mortgage. I sold the house and returned the money to the bank.
You said so.
Yes, returned the money to the bank because that was just what I had to do. Moved to a 3-bedroom flat. Those are some things. But today I look back, people are like, wow, I want to be like you. I'm like, you want to be
you
like
sure
me?
you want to be like
You're
me?
going to go through what I went through also and all that. So that's the thing. There's nothing ever great that will last that does not have a story of sacrifice behind it. Now, the truth about it is that we're not now going to go and look for sacrifice around. God will bring you and God will demand sacrifices of you. Exactly, yeah. Sacrificing your time, in your energy, in your focus, in your attention. There are things I want to do sometimes and God says it's not time for this, it's this other thing. And this other thing doesn't look glamorous. The other one has many likes on Instagram, right? But that's what God is asking me to do. And that's the sacrifice that you're going to... again, even in marriage, sacrifice.
Yeah,
in anything that is great, it's always about sacrifice. So people must understand it, but realize that if you obey and serve, they will spend their days in prosperity and their years in pleasure. That's just the way that it works. So sacrifice is just the path to greatness.
Which will take me straight to the concept of faithfulness.
Yes.
Because I think faithfulness is tied to sacrifice. Because it's you also sacrificing part
who
of
you are
yourself
because of something or somebody else.
Okay, so when they hear faithfulness, I think I'm saying something else. So what is the concept of faithfulness as explained in this book?
So in Luke 16:12, I read this. I was meditating when I was like, whoa. So it says, if you are not faithful in what belongs to another man, who will give you your own? So Jesus is speaking, so at least Jesus will not give you. And I don't want what Jesus will not give me, right? So I now began to realize that, look, for every stage people want the top, but one of the key criteria is that wherever you are, you must be found faithful. So when I find people that work, and then they give you a job to do, you're not doing the job, and you're expecting God to prosper you, it doesn't work that way.
Yes, thank you.
God is checking out your job. Not like he's trying to mark you down, but he expects you to be faithful.
Yeah.
And God always rewards faithfulness.
Yes.
The Bible says a faithful man will abound with blessings. So the blessings will come, but it starts with faithfulness. People want their own without being faithful with another, but it doesn't work that way.
You said usually there is a proving phase.
Yes.
Before a releasing phase.
Very true.
In other words, God will take you through a phase to confirm that you have been faithful to what belongs to someone else, to confirm that you will then be faithful
with what?
When he releases you into your own assignment.
Let me say something about if you are lazy with another person's job, you'll be lazy with your own. That's what I realized.
#BAM. If
Very
you are
true.
lazy with another person's job,
Yeah.
you'll be lazy with your own.
True. Very, very true. That's where fruitfulness comes in.
This is deep. Let's talk about the concept of people.
Okay, so that concept basically says that, look, you are not sent to everybody. That's something people need to realize. Why are they not looking at me? Maybe you're looking at the wrong people. Wrong set of people. So Paul was focused on the Gentiles. Peter was focused on the Jews. Jesus said, go to the lost sheep of Israel. And those are some scriptures that I quoted there. So it lets you know that for you to be very effective, you must know who God sent you to. A lot of people are trying to reach everybody.
You want to change the world.
Thank you. Exactly, yeah. But I'm not trying to reach everybody. I understand who I am and understand that your design is for certain people. You would appeal to some people, and some people they will be, angry with you. Yes. And you now begin to wonder why. They're just not your people. That's what I realized and all that. So the concept of people is basically understanding that your gift is for a certain people. It might be a generation. It might be a race. That's the truth about it. It might be in a location. It might be kind of people and all that. And what that does is that it makes you effective in relating to them. So when it comes to fulfilling purpose and all that, it's important you realize that God will place you around certain kinds of people. The sooner you understand those you are sent to, the quicker you will be in the race of purpose. That's
So don't
what it
try
works.
to change the whole world.
Yes, exactly.
I think the last one we can take before you have to get this book, but I like the fact that you added the concept of evangelism.
Yes.
And I say that because many times we think evangelism has to be specific to maybe when church is going out on evangelism or when you have organized something.
Event, yes.
But you explain it as understanding that regardless of where you are, you need to find a way to evangelize the gospel. In practical ways, how can you teach people how to practice that concept?
So the idea behind it is also, Bible calls it the light of the world. And so if you are an aeronautical engineer, for example, there's certain kind of people you're going to reach. So when it says go out into all ethnos, all nations, he's not speaking about nations as in countries, but a kind of people. So your job or your work exposes you to certain kinds of people. If you don't look a certain kind of way, they will not listen to you. That's the fact about it. So somebody else, you might be loaded, but they will not listen to you because there's a way they think, there's a way that they behave and all that. However, when they meet somebody like them, then they're open to that kind of person. And I've seen it play out in that regard. Okay, so it's important, very critical that you understand that your pulpit is where you work.
Thank you.
Your customers
pulpit is where you work.
Your customers. So a lot of people think that I'm going out for evangelism on Saturday.
Yes.
Meanwhile, you pass so many people that are not Christians during the week. So you spoke to them in the bank, your account officer came, and the only transaction was financial, not spiritual. So you missed out an opportunity in that regard. So it's not meant to, Jesus said, my yoke is easy, my body is light. At the time, I thought I was lying. So this thing is very hard. Every Sunday in this song, we'll be going out on evangelism. But it says you don't have to wait till then. On Monday, of course, do your job. And again, it says, just to be wise as serpents. You are not ringing a bell in the office and saying, this is my pulpit. That's what we're talking about.
And turning the office to a church.
Yes, your life is the first message. And that's what people need to understand, that people first look at you before they listen to you. That's the thing about it. Bible said they took note of that and then they called them Christians, Christ-like. So it was that behavior first before even the message that is there. Essentially, let people begin to say to you, you are different. Why do you, and all that. And then that now opens, because they came to you. Of course, sometimes you can go ahead and have conversations with them and all that. But I find it's very effective in the workplace to be able to do that rather than, on the road. On the road, people are thinking, is this kidnapping? Is this whatever? I need to run and stuff like that. But that's what it works.
True that. Yes. We can go, there are 31 concepts in the book. I don't think we've touched up to 10 in this conversation. No. This is a very necessary book, not in your library, but in your heart. Where can people get copies of this book? We
have it in the major bookstores, and then also you can actually order it on my website, JIMITEWE.org, and all that, so it's possible to get that from there.
Please get a copy of the Purpose book. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For being a guest.
I've enjoyed it.
I have enjoyed and learned a lot from reading the book and from listening to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The subject of purpose is one that is very important to every single human being in the earth, and we cannot overemphasize it. And it will do us good to learn as much as we can so that we can live lives that are fulfilling. There's no point getting to the end of your life and looking back in regret and wondering, how did I spend my time on earth? And like we said, it's not just about discovering purpose, it's about fulfilling purpose. And this book helps you to understand how you can fulfill your purpose, the steps you need to take, and also sometimes the challenges and the tests and the trials and the things that life will present to you. But remember one very important thing: purpose comes from God, not from you. I want to thank you for watching today's edition of Chapters, and remember that it is not just about what you know, but what you do with what you know. Until the next episode, God bless you.